Hey YouTube, Unkert here. In this video we're going to talk about unit tests in Python. So I'm going to go over and create a file, and I'm going to call this file main.py. And within main.py we are going to just create some functions. So let's just say these functions will, and we'll probably only do one, raise a number to a power. Okay. All right. And then we'll go down here and we'll create a function. I'm going to call it square. It's going to take in a number as a parameter. And what this function is going to do is going to square a number and return the result. Okay. So it's going to do that. All right. And what I'm going to just say right now is return num times num. Okay, so that's it for this function. That's all it's going to do. Okay, and let's save this. And I think it wants me to have a period here. Okay, so we've got our main.py. And we're also going to create a file, and I'm going to name that file test.py. You can name it whatever you want. It could be test, it could be unit test, etc., etc. So let's go do that. Let's go name another file. We'll name it test.py. And this file is going to run tests on main.py. Okay? All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to import this unit test. Okay? And what unit test is going to do is going to allow us to run some of these tests pretty easily. We also need to import the main file. So we're going to type import main. Okay. And then we're going to create a class. Okay. So I'm going to create a class, and I'm going to call the class main test. You don't have to call it that, but that's what I'm going to call it. And I'm going to pass into the test unit test dot and then test case. Okay, and I'm going to just make a doc string here and say this class tests various scenarios, of main.py functions, or the one function really. But anyways, you get the point. We're making our doc string, and now we're going to create our first test. So I'm going to create a method. I'm going to call it test square, and I'm going to pass in self here, just like we would normally do within a method within a class. And I'm going to make a little doc string here saying that this is going to test a positive parameter in the square function. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to say test param, and I'm going to set it equal to 3. And I'm going to say result, and I can say equals main, and then dot will give me the methods from the main. So I'm going to do dot square. And what we're going to do is pass in the test param. Okay, and then there's something that unit test gives us, which is assert equal. Okay, and so what we can do is we can do self dot assert equal. Okay, and then we can pass in the result and what it should be when it's squared, which should be 9. Okay, all right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to save this, and I have this plugin. This is the Pulsar text editor, by the way. I'm just showing you different ones. I may use this for a JavaScript tutorial that I'm doing. But anyways, so I have this plugin that allows me to build it with Python. So let's just go do that. I'm going to build it with Python, and we didn't get anything. Let's try this again. And we didn't get anything because, actually, before we try it, let's not try it again. Let's actually run this, and we want to run it with unit test dot, and then we can do the main. Okay, so now we can run this. All right, and my formatter is telling me, hey, you need 2 spaces after the class. Okay, so now let's run it. All right, and we ran one test in 0.0 seconds, and the test was okay. Okay, so our first test passed, but we could enter in different things. For instance, we could enter in a negative number, so we should probably check that. So I'm going to create another test here. I'm going to say test square negative, and I'll again pass in self, and give this one a doc string here. I'll say test a negative parameter in the square function. Okay, I'll close out that doc string there. And then I'll create a test parameter. Let's say this parameter is -5. And we'll create a result variable within inside this method. We'll say that's equal to main.square. Okay, and then we'll do test param. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll say self.assert equal, and we'll compare the results and what we should get, which is positive 25 when squaring it. Okay, so then let's run our tests, and we ran 2 tests in 0.0 seconds. Again, that's okay. Cool. So far it's working out pretty well, but what if we accidentally pass in a string? So we should probably test that. So we should say test square, and we'll test it with a string. Again, we'll pass in the self here, and what we'll do is we'll test if the wrong data type of string is entered, okay, into this function. All right. So what we'll do is we will first do create a test parameter. So let's say test parameter str for string equals a, okay, which is a string. Okay, so then we'll say self, and we'll use assert. This one I'm going to use assert true, and what I'm going to do say is instance, and I'm going to check if the output is an instance of the value error. So I'll pass in result and then value error. Okay, and then I'll check my main file, and let's just run this test and see what happens. So let's go run it, and we completed 3 tests in 0.02 seconds. We failed with 1 test. Okay, so we failed on 1 test. So maybe what we want to do is we want to do a try here. So what we want to do is we'll say try, okay, and then we'll try to return num times num if they can both be transformed into integers. So we'll say int num and do int num. Okay, we'll try that, and what we'll do is we'll accept a value error, and we'll say as error. Okay, and then we'll return the error if we have the wrong thing. Okay, so we'll do that. We'll save that. Now let's try this and see what happens. Okay, so if we do our test, okay, so the test passed. So this created an instance of the value error class. Okay, so that's what the assert true is instance, the result in the value error. Okay, so that's pretty sweet. Now, what if we basically went and tried to test if the user put in a Boolean? Okay, so let's create another function. Let's say def, and we'll do test square, and I'm going to say bool. Okay, and I'm going to pass in the self here, and I'm going to say as a doc string test if the Boolean data type is entered. Okay, something like that. All right, and then we'll create a test parameter. Say test param bool equals true. Okay, and what we'll do is we'll say the result equals main.square, and then we'll pass in test parameter bool. Okay, so we're passing in that. Now we have to have something to catch it in our main function. So let's go to our main function here. And before we even try this code, let's say if, and we'll do type num, and we'll compare this to the type bool, so boolean. So if the type is a boolean, we will return something like, you fool, you entered the wrong data type. Something like that. Okay, and what we'll do, let's just copy this here. Okay, and then I'm going to go over here, and what I'm going to do now is do an assert equal. So I'm going to say self dot assert equal, and we'll do the result and then the string, okay, which is, you fool, you entered the wrong data type. Okay, so notice as we are doing our unit tests, we are kind of building out our function to take into account different edge cases, is what you would say. All right, so let's now run this, and again, we get 4 tests in 0.0 seconds. All are okay, so good. We're accounting for if they enter a Boolean. Let's just make sure, like even if they enter in a false Boolean, so let's say def test square false bool, and we'll pass in the self here, and then we'll say, what we'll do is we'll test if the Boolean type is false to make sure this works. Okay, and then, whoops, I had one too many. And then what I want to do here is I want to say test param, just call it false, equals false. Okay, we'll say the result equals main.square, and we'll pass in the test parameter of false. And then what we'll do is we'll do self.assert equal, and we'll do the result. And again, we'll get that same string. So you fool, you entered the wrong data type. Okay, let's now run this test. Okay, so we'll run this test, and okay, still all the tests are being okay. Okay, so that's what we're doing with this unit testing. We are just coming up with a bunch of test cases on our function and changing our function as we test. And stuff that's not in a function, maybe we should write it in a function to test. So hopefully this gave you a little intro into unit testing. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.